Let me tell you guys a story. When I first read Lore of the Mysteries, I was so intrigued by this new sort of steampunk Victorian era-esque world with all the rich characters, of wonderful main character that I absolutely loved, the tarot club, the side characters, etc. But one thing sticked out to me, and that was the rich history of the world. I mean, what's there not to love about it? The world is already existing for thousands of years before Klein Moretti was transmigrated and pulled into the world, and we're experiencing it for the first time with him. So as we go through the book, we find more and more about the history of it, and it just became more and more intriguing for me personally. But still, I felt like the book could have expanded a bit more on it and maybe made it a bit easier to understand. So that's what this video is about. I'll be going over every single major event all the way back from the pre-epoch up until Klein Moretti was transmigrated, going through it in epochs. Yes, I'm talking about every single event, so make sure you guys stick around to know exactly what happens. Regardless, let's move on to the pre-epoch. Now let's start it off straight away with the pre-epoch. On my first read through, I was always so curious on how everything started, but I never really got too many context clues behind it. I never really understood too much about it, so I'll try my best to convey it as simple as possible for you guys. First of all, the original creator, now I know there's a lot of different creators in Lore of the Mysteries, but the one who created everything, the embodiment of all pathways, Sephiroth, beyond our characteristics, etc., the one who created the universe, had too many things inside of him, so he spilled out and created multiple different great old ones, sort of personas. Of course, the two most main ones being Celestial Worthy and Primordial One, God Almighty. Think of it as the man inside of Adam and the man inside of Klein. Now on top of this, he created and bred other outer deities, right? People outside of Earth, that being, of course, most notably the Mother Goddess of Depravity, the Mother Tree of Desire, and the Son of Chaos. Now for now, they didn't really have much business with Earth, and for thousands of years, the original creator went into slumber, and these great old ones walked around Earth. Of course, the main ones being the three pillars, the Celestial Worthy, the Primordial One, and the Mother Goddess of Depravity, who was outside of Earth. Now, later on, the original creator was starting to awaken after thousands of years around the year of 2020. Now, in order to sort of create a plan to revive, Celestial Worthy pulled people into the Sapphire Castle. Most notably, he pulled Roselle Gustav and Klein Moretti. That is how Klein Moretti eventually got transmigrated all the way into the future, but we'll get there when we talk about it. Now, after the original creator awoke, he immediately shattered. He exploded, think of it as that, and split off into all 9 Sephiroth, all the 22 different pathways, and all Beyonder characteristics. Now, this naturally attracted all the outer deities that he created, including the Mother Goddess of Depravity, a pillar of the universe. Now, they're all trying to invade Earth, but they can't due to the residual power of the original creator. Now, this stops them from entering Earth, and they have been waiting for thousands of years all the way up until the apocalypse in order to take back what they want. Think of it as like such a wonderful meal that they want to have no matter what, right? That's the convergence. So yeah, on top of this, the cataclysm occurred and basically humanity was wiped out, and the Northern America for us turned into the northern continent, and South America turned into the southern continent. Think of Europe and Asia as completely cooked, East Asia became the Western continent, which we still don't know much about, and the rest of Europe and West Asia turned into the Forsaken Land of Gods. But for now, it is something different in this epoch, but we'll get there in just a second. That's basically the pre-epoch. It's a very interesting epoch, and it continues directly into the second one. So let's move on to the first epoch. Now, next up, and of course after the pre-epoch, is the first epoch, also known as the Age of Chaos. Now, there's a good reason for its name, because think about it for a second. After the cataclysm, after the human race was wiped out, it is like a fresh slate. I mean, there were so many opportunities, and the ancient gods were born, and so were many different races. I'm talking about mutants, sea monsters, phoenixes, dragons, elves, sanguines, vampires, any mythical creature that you can think of was born during this time, and well, they roamed Earth during the first epoch, also known as the Age of Chaos. On top of this, the great old ones, more notably Celestial Worthy and the Primordial One, God Almighty, were also still roaming Earth, and the Celestial Worthy managed to seal off the main consciousness of the Son of Chaos, one of the outer deities the original creator created, into the magic wishing lamp, which is also mentioned all the way in the future, connecting to Klein Moretti and Adam way in the 5th epoch, and I'll make sure to link it back when we get there, but that is just a fun fact that the, well, magic genie is all the way from this epoch. Now, of course, after this, the Celestial Worthy and the Primordial One tried to accommodate more and more Sephiroth. Think of it again as a tasty snack they can't resist, but after having too many snacks, they had no choice but to converge, and they had basically a battle to its death. Now they both ended up perishing, but before that, Celestial Worthy sealed off every single Sephiroth except for the Sapphire Castle and the Chaos Sea in the Western continent, and sealed off the Western continent in its entirety. The Western continent being China, think of it as sort of that part of the world. And yeah, basically after that they both perished, and from the remains of the God Almighty, the error uniqueness manifested alongside the first blasphemy slate, and this was all next to the Chaos Sea. Now this will play a role in just a second in the second epoch, but that's sort of the main event that happened in the first one, and after this for countless of years the world was, well, in an age of chaos. Now let's move on to the second epoch. Now next up we will be talking about the second epoch. Following the Age of Chaos in the first epoch, the second epoch is known as the Dark Epoch. All of those races that I mentioned back in the first epoch, the mutated sea monsters, sanguines, giants, phoenixes, etc., they became the kings of the world with 8 ancient gods ruling above all and cementing their races as the strongest, each of them having countless subsidiary gods, also known as angels, by their sides. And this is also when the first transmigrator, Amanesis, appeared and became the subsidiary god, angel of demonic wolf Legria. On top of this, very soon after, the ancient sun god finally transmigrated and basically was born into power. I mean, this guy walked out with the first blasphemy state, with the Chaos Sea, and with the uniqueness of the error pathway, basically buffing him instantly, making him incredibly overpowered, and he was a threat during this epoch, and this was sort of when he was the main character. Now on top of this, there was a bunch of different events that occurred in the second epoch. Let me break them down for you. First of all, let's talk about Lilith. Lilith apparently perished in one of the battles between all of the gods, and alongside her demonic wolf Legria also perished, allowing the Evernight goddess to sort of make herself and sort of rule her own nation, starting to sort of ascend towards the sequence 0 position, but we'll get there in just a second. Now basically Lilith pretended to die but worked alongside the Evernight goddess and of course the ancient sun god, and actually they assassinated Omabella, the goddess of harvest, and well, she turned into the grade 0 sealed artifact for the city of Silver, back then known as the Kingdom of Silver, and well, she basically got fully taken over by Lilith, and now Lilith was pretending to be her. And yes, this started all the way back in the second epoch, and it only paid off thousands of years future in, once again I'll mention it, in the 5th epoch. That is ridiculous to think about. I mean, that is just insane to me, mind-blowing. On top of this, a bunch of other things happened. Grizel the dragon was born and created Grizel's Travels. The first sort of distributary occurred, sort of the river of eternal darkness, one of the Sephiroth, started to leak out of the Western continent, the first one whose power started to sort of break out of the barrier of the Western continent, and Phoenix ancestor Gregas managed to create a distributary in order to sort of seep energy from it. And yeah, a bunch of other things happened, but of course the main character, the ancient sun god, this is when he took over. I mean, this guy properly took over. I mean, he wiped out almost every ancient god, took all of their powers, and basically forcibly put humanity up on the pedestal once again, and putting all of these races back in the dirt. I mean, this guy is an absolute monster for this, and he took all of them over. Eventually, of course, the God Almighty started to awaken inside of him, so he created Adam not only to free himself from these extra Beyonder characteristics from the visionary pathway, but also a way for him to revive in the future. Now, of course, the Evernight goddess also ascended to sequence 0 around this time, and yeah, this sort of created a new path forward for humanity, with the Evernight goddess and the ancient sun god especially being at the top. Now let's move on to the third epoch. Next up, we have the third epoch, also known as the Cataclysm epoch. At the end of the previous epoch, the ancient sun god basically forcibly made humanity the supreme race and forcibly put every other race down. I mean, he hunted them down, made every other race go into hiding or simply eviscerate them, make them perish. So yeah, the very first thing he did in the third epoch, once humanity rose to power, is create Amon, our best boy, Monocle Man. Of course, because he had too many Beyonder characteristics and he needed to expel them, so he created his children and his other personas, Sasrir, Adam, Amon, right? Now these three were all part of the Rose Redemption as well, which were the angels following him, led by Dark Angel Sasrir, also him. So I'll name you all of them. Sasrir, Adam, Amon, all part of the ancient sun god. Then the two most other loyal angels that were just loyal to him out of their own free will, that being Angel of War Medici and Angel of Fate Ouroboros. Now those two were very loyal to him, but then we get to the three traitors, and I'll get to the Feast of Betrayal in just a second. The three traitors being Alcusis, Leodero, and Herabergen. Now them three all had pathways, and they all wanted to be sequence zeros, and they knew that the ancient sun god had the remaining characteristic they needed in order to ascend, on top of the uniqueness. So in a sort of crazy moment where the ancient sun god was, well, very vulnerable due to the God Almighty awakening inside of him and Dark Angel Sasra being asleep. They took advantage of this and feasted on the ancient sun god. There's a brutal fan art of them just simply feasting on his remains, right? And they all became sequence zeros of their pathway, but killed off the ancient sun god in the process. Thankfully, however, the ancient sun god did manage to sort of revive within two different places, that being, of course, Sasrir, his humanity awakened within Sasrir, and his godhood, his divinity, awoke within Adam. Now, Adam is simply pretending to be this zealous sort of brother, son, that wants to revive his father no matter what, but nobody knows he is actually the father. Yes, Lord of the Mysteries can be very confusing at times. Now, also in the third epoch, notable, sort of mentions is the Earth Mother became sequence zero and the God of Combat became sequence zero. Very ironic. We'll talk about it in the fifth epoch. But that's basically it for the third epoch. Not great for the ancient sun god, but he did have his moment to shine. And the fourth epoch is where things get crazy. So let's move on to that. Now we move on to the fourth epoch, arguably the epoch with the most information and the most crazy battles. There's a reason this epoch is called the epoch of the gods. I mean, this was the epoch when gods were free to roam the earth and create various different miracles, and of course, more importantly, fight each other. I mean, there were so many fights in this epoch, and there could be a whole 1000-chapter book written on this epoch alone. So let me try and break it down for you guys. First of all, of course, at the end of the previous one, we all know that the ancient sun god died. Now, this of course created the true creator and Adam, of course, being the ancient sun god. Now, the second blasphemy slay also occurred after the ancient sun god died, and a bunch of familiar names you're very used to all saw it. I'm talking about Elise the Tutor, Bethel Abraham, someone from the Zaratul family, etc. Basically, all big families managed to see the second blasphemy slay before Adam managed to take it away. So basically, everyone knew the advancement rituals, everyone knew everything that the ancient sun god researched, which he had a lot of, by the way. He basically knew every single pathway, all of the advancement rituals, everything needed to advance. They all got it. So this created the age of the gods. First of all, the first Solomon Empire occurred. Solomon advanced the sequence zero of Black Emperor and created the Solomon Empire. Now, Elise the Tutor and Trunoest weren't in agreement for this, so they decided to collaborate and take down the Solomon Empire and Solomon himself. They succeeded and they took him down. Around the same time, this is when Death became sequence zero of the Death pathway, and around when the Primordial Demoness became sequence zero of the Demoness pathway and established the Demoness family. Now, after they took down Solomon, Alista wanted to become sequence zero of the Black Emperor and started secretly setting up his mausoleums with the help of Bethel Abraham. However, what ended up happening is Solomon revived in advance, sort of very early, and he was unable to advance the sequence zero Black Emperor. So in a sort of desperation attempt, he gathered together Ammon and Adam and got them to help him entrap 3 sequence 1 angels of the Red Priest pathways alongside, well, Medici, who was a king of angels and had the uniqueness with him, and they basically killed them all, and he advanced to a Red Priest. He advanced from a Black Emperor to a Red Priest. That is ridiculous. They are non-neighboring pathways, but he somehow managed to survive, but he was half crazy at this point. At the same time, Trunoest, a bit before Elise the Tutor became Red Priest, was simply supported by everyone in order to become sequence zero of the Justicia pathway, and with the support of all the Orthodox gods, he, well, comfortably made that advancement and was perfectly fine. Now, basically, these 4 emperors, there's the Solomon, Mr. Solomon himself, Elise the Tutor, Trunoest, and Death. They had to fight. This is the age of the gods, and around 500 years after Elise the Tutor became the Red Priest, which was the last person to advance, they all fought, and 3 of them perished. Yes, Trunoest, Black Emperor Solomon, and Red Priest Elise the Tutor all perished in this battle. Now, on top of this, all this chaos, a bunch of other things occurred, so I'm just going to list a bunch of different events that occurred and try and keep them in order. After the whole war, Death being the only survivor and I guess victor of this all, getting the Red Priest pathway uniqueness for himself and attempting to become a Great Old One with a sort of messed up combination of various different pathways, and of course the Red Priest pathway uniqueness. Of course, he failed and went crazy, and of course ended up getting hunted down and killed towards the latter half of the 4th epoch. On top of this, Bethel Abraham and Antigonus were a deadly duo, and well, with the help of Bethel Abraham, Antigonus managed to hunt down the senior ancestor of the Zaratul family and take away one of his sequence 1 characteristics, instantly killing him. I mean, they can be everywhere and anyone at once. That is one of the scariest combinations to go against. So yeah, he perished, and Antigonus became the half-fool. Of course, he lost control because of celestial word, the awakening inside of him, etc. And the Evernight goddess and her church used this chance to basically take over the nation of Evernight, basically seal away Antigonus, torture him for eternity, at the same time take over his sister and turn his own sister into a sealed artifact. 017, the vessel that the Evernight goddess uses multiple times in the 5th epoch to descend onto Earth, is the sister of Antigonus, the man she is basically torturing and the man whose entire race she killed. So yeah, it is absolutely brutal, but hey, I guess you have to do what you gotta do, but it is pretty messed up if you think about it for a second. On top of this, she again had involvement alongside the god of storms, Leodero, in sealing away Bethel Abraham, in which they successfully did. And of course, following that, the Abraham family went completely downhill. Of course, after he got corrupted by the mother goddess of depravity, and of course the blood moon curse, they all went to shit basically. Now on top of this, Ammon also got his another sequence 1 characteristic of the error pathway through the Jacob family, and basically took over the entire Jacob family, pretending to be their senior ancestor for who knows how long, just because he's Ammon. And of course, the kingdom of silver became the city of silver after they were no longer able to keep themselves afloat in the forsaken land of gods. Following the ancient sun god's death and the creation of the forsaken land of gods, they had to reduce themselves to a mere city from a kingdom, so basically starting their downfall and their seemingly eternal torture. Now of course, on top of this, the god of craftsmanship became sequence 0, the god of steam machinery in the future as we know him today, and became the final orthodox god. And the whole epoch ended with the barrier around Earth preventing the apocalypse starting to crack, right, with all the Sephiroth starting to leak from the western continent, the nation of disorder, etc. And the 7 orthodox god all had to move their sort of divine kingdoms up into the astral world in order to keep sort of the barrier afloat and make sure the outer deities don't invade Earth just yet. That is how the Age of the Gods ended, and that's how the 5th epoch started. Finally, we arrived to the 5th epoch, also known as the Iron Age. So basically, at the end of the 4th epoch, the death of Death occurred. Death god Salinger finally perished at the hands of all the Orthodox gods, and they moved all their divine kingdoms into the astral world in order to sort of mend the cracks in the barrier, preventing the apocalypse. But of course, the outer deities are starting to get a hold onto Earth, and we see this in the 5th epoch with the Mother Tree of Desire making her debut and starting to just annoy everyone on Earth. I mean, she's one of the most annoying evil gods, always pesky, always there, and she is starting to show her sort of passion by corrupting the chained god and creating abomination Sua being one of the biggest frauds. But yeah, we don't talk about him, he's just a puppet at the end of the day. And fun fact, he doesn't have any sequence 9 to sequence 2 characteristic, he only has a sequence 1 characteristics, so you can't blame him too much, but he is still a fraud. Regardless, after all of this, Roselle Gustav was of course born, created the Industrial Revolution, carried the god of steam and machinery or craftsmanship before this on his back. I mean, this guy digested his potion for him. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Should have been a dual pathway beyond, or should have just wiped that guy out. Should have became Black Emperor and sort of steam and machinery, right, Paragon, but whatever. Anyways, he created the Industrial Revolution. We all know and love Roselle. I don't really have to speak about him too much. Spoke to Mr. Door, of course, spoke to Zaratul, was sort of buddies with him before Zaratul got completely corrupted. And yeah, he became Black Emperor, ultimately got assassinated, but has a way to revive in the future. And eventually all the characters we love and know all started to be born, and this led to Clan Reddy being born and Zhu Minghui eventually starting Lord of the Mysteries. Well, that's it. That's basically the entire history of Lord of the Mysteries leading up to the start of it, basically where we see chapter 1 in one video. Let me know, guys, well, what you thought. I think this video was meant to make it a bit simple for you guys in order to just understand everything, because I know the first time I read the story, I truly did not understand much. I mean, I was so confused with the history of it, so I really hope this clears some things up for you guys. And please kindly let me know down in the comments what again you guys thought about this video and what you guys want to see next. I am going to cover every volume individually, starting from, well, next week sometime, of volume 1 of Lord of the Mysteries, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Then move on to Circle of Inevitability, especially as it's coming to its end. I definitely want to talk about it. It's been so hype recently. Please catch up to Circle of Inevitability. Give it a chance, please. And yeah, that's it. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and see you guys in the next one.